All right, folks, good morning. We are going to get started with our pose-to-pose ball bounce. So let me get you folks squared away here with what you need to get started. So I just have an empty scene here. And before I even load anything up, just because it'll automatically extend my exposure for me if I do this, I'm going to just give myself like, I don't know, 170 frames of time. I'm probably not going to need all of this time. In fact, I almost guarantee I don't need all of this time. But there we go, 170 frames. Boom. So now I'll go ahead and bring in my background image, which I provided you folks, which is the screenshot of the ball bounce going up and down. So as we talked about last week, this is recorded on ones. I've in the past said it was recorded on twos, but I actually went back and checked. It was on ones. So I just took my screenshot. As I said, it came in fully exposed for the whole duration of my timeline. And then I used the scale tool like we did last week, making sure to do from the corners to scale it up. These little black lines here, they're kind of thin and hard to see, but those indicate your camera boundaries. So I just want to make sure that my ball bounce filled the whole camera space. And then, so this drawing layer that comes in by default for us, I'm going to name this my stage. So this layer is called stage. And for this, I want to set up a scene for my ball bounce to take place in. So I'll use the rectangle tool and I'm going to make a new color. And I'll call this stage ground. Oops. Gruden. Ground. Let's go with like a dirt brown, right? Boom. Dirt. I have some dirt down here. I'm just making a rectangle that's bigger than the camera, so it doesn't really matter. And make sure it lines up with these bounces down here where you can see the ball bounce is on that frame, it's hitting the ground. So that helps me line things up there. Paint bucket to fill it in. So now I got a little ground plane. And then I'll take my rectangle again and make a new color. We'll call this pedestal. And what do I want my pedestal to be? We'll go teal in honor of the Sharks' first win last night. And so there we go. Make a little pedestal up here where the ball starts. So the idea being you want it to sort of look like the ball is rolling off the edge of your pedestal. So that way you don't have any weird frames where it's like clipping through the pedestal and these kind of things. So boom, boom, boom. Okay, there we go. Pedestal is all filled in. So if I were to, so I got this. I got my pedestal area, right? And I need to extend this for the whole duration. So I'll right click on the last frame and extend exposure. And so now I'll go ahead, and this is where I would say we need to create a ball. So there are two different ways that you can go about this. The first one is just make your ball in Harmony. So I'll make a new drawing layer and I'll call this ball. Add and close. Oh, look at that. Nice. Extend exposure for scene duration. Finally, they're adding things that are useful to Harmony. Let's go. So this frame is fully extended. There's nothing on it. What I need to create on it would be a ball. So I'll use my vectorized line. Boom. There's my outline. And let's say I'm going to use a red ball. But, and here's the key, later on, we will need to rotate our ball as it is moving. And we won't really be able to see the rotation of the ball as it's going without some kind of indicator that the ball, like some kind of symbol or indicator that the ball is in motion, right? So on your ball, if you are making it in Toon Boom, make sure you have some kind of design on there. So maybe you want to do a little star, right? Or, you know, first initial of your name. Or maybe you want to do a little cat face, right? Whatever suits your fancies. Just there has to be some kind of symbol or indicator that the ball is in motion, right? Now, option number 2, which is my preference, is to go mask a ball, a circle in Photoshop and bring it in with transparency. So I have made this Mike Wazowski ball. So again, it's transparent. When it asks for transparency, you want to set it to straight so that it brings in the transparency as it is. And then it puts it behind the background for some reason. And I'm going to move it on top. And there's my ball. So I'm going to go ahead and just do the simple thing, which is scale my ball down. And then move it over to where it starts. All right. There we have it. My ball is correctly sized and placed. So this is our starting, right? We have our backdrop with the angle of the ball. We have the stage. We have the ball bounce. No, we'll add the color card at the very end. We'll add the color card at the end. We don't need it right now. So here is where we start the animation process. So we have in the past just been using the animation tools directly onto our image or drawing layers. And for simple things like what we've done already, where we just I resized the background or I moved the ball to its starting location and resized it, setting keyframes on the initial image or drawing layer is fine. Now, going forward though, when you're doing more complex animation, you really want your animation to live on what we call a peg, which is just a simple controller for whatever image you have it attached to, right? So it's very much like a, why can I not, marionette? Very much like a marionette, right? So you have your puppet, and then you have the strings that control it, right? Same idea for a peg. Our drawing or image is the little puppet, and the peg is what controls what the puppet does. That way we keep our animation separate from any changes that we might be doing that are just sort of mundane for the image, be it moving it or rotating it or these kind of things to get it positioned. The rest of the changes in its position and rotation and translation, all that stuff, are controlled by the peg. So now that we've got it set up, I will add it to a peg. There is a little orange icon here. This one right here, if I have my ball selected, it will add it to a peg. You'll see ball bounce Mike P. But also you can do this plus sign and choose parent peg as well. It does the same thing, right? Or you can just use a little orange icon. But now I have this empty layer that you can see my ball bounce is within, right? You can see the little arrow down. So very much like an adjustment layer in Photoshop might affect a singular individual layer when you clip it onto. Our peg very much similarly only affects one layer, or if you apply a bunch into the same peg, it'll control more. But this peg controller is just for our ball. So I'm going to go ahead and put the peg controller directly on my ball to make my life a little easier. And so here's where we're going to start setting up our ball bounce with our keyframes. So I am going to just very lightly move the ball, which will set an initial keyframe on frame 1. And then, so what I was telling you folks to do yesterday is we'll worry about the timing later. So that's what I'm going to do right now. And I'm just going to go, okay, frame 5, the ball should be at the bottom. It should be touching the ground, right? Then frame 10, again, this timing is not accurate. I'm just using it to get my poses in the correct spot. So I'm going to say 10 is there. Great. So I'll go to frame 15, and then it'll be back at the bottom again. Then frame 20 is back up at the top. And I'm just using the image as a guide, going 5 frames at a time and just lining things up with where they would be in space, but not in time. So right now we're just worried about where is our key pose set in space. That is our initial concern. Is our ball getting to the appropriate space or point in space? So just up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. Okay. So, if I just play this, it's going to have a lot wrong with it, but just to show you, boom, my ball just go zigzag, right? So really fast over here because it moves a lot of distance in a short period of time right now. Whoopsie. But still. So that's all we needed for that method, or for that step. So let's also do ourselves a favor and visualize the path that our ball is traveling. So with my peg selected, under the View menu, under Show, there's this thing called the Control, and that will show you the path that your ball is traveling. And so you can see how that aligns with the example image. Now our ball is doing a couple of things wrong here, which we will solve in a moment, which is that, one, it is curving through the points in space. It's moving through the points in space, and you can sort of see how down here at the bottom it's trying to smoothly curve and come through these points, like making a nice little snaky S-curve. So we need to indicate, or we will need to indicate to Harmony, that these should stay in the motion that they're following and not try and curve their way through. And then additionally, it's moving at a uniform speed. So it is moving at a linear speed between each of these keyframes. So once we get the keyframes set to the right point in time, then we'll need to go back and adjust how quickly or how slowly they arrive at those points in time, right? As a reminder, our slow in and slow out principle from the 12 principles. So right now, and then the squash and stretch, right? Eventually. So let us start with adjusting our timing. So if we roll this back to frame 1, so this is where it starts, and we can tell how many frames it takes to get to the ground. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And because this one isn't touching the ground, we're going to cheat it a little bit, and so we'll say 10. So it takes 10 frames to get to the ground, right? So this keyframe of the ball touching the ground should actually be here on frame 10. So how do we move all these keyframes easily? So the one option would be to just click and select and drag all of these. You can totally do that. But the better option would be, if I select the space in between these two keyframes, I can, if I look under the exposure menu, it will show you increase or decrease the exposure. So I can spread, or I can move them out or closer together by using the plus or the minus key. Now you folks don't have a 10 key, as it's called, like the number pad. So just for sake of pointing out to you, the plus sign is actually shift and the button next to the backspace key, the equal sign, because it is the modified key on that. So minus is just the left button, the hyphen, but plus is you have to hold shift and tap the equal sign if I want to increase exposure. So I'm selected there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Boom. Now, here's the other problem, right? So we'll deal with this later, but it's still doing the curve thing. So we'll adjust this to follow this later. All right, so now I'm here. How long does it take for me to get up here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Right? So far, so good. So now, how long does it take me to get to the bottom? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I got 5 here. 6, 7, 8, 9. Boom. So far, so good. Now we're here. How long does it take to get to the top? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Add one more in. Great. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2. Right? Because I had everything spaced out by 5s. How long to the top? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So now I minus 1. Now we're here. How long to the bottom? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Fantastic. No changes. Boom. 1, 2, 3. So I need to minus 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. Minus 1. 1, 2, 3. So at a certain point, it hits like a critical mass of speed. 1, 2, 3. Minus 2. And yeah, 1, 2, 3. So this is down to 2. This is down to 3. And then these are going to be 2. And there we have it. So now if I play this, again, our speed is still linear, and we have not adjusted what we call the tension. So up, down, up, down, up, down. So if I play this, so the end looks pretty good because, you know, the linear aspect of it is not really affecting it too much, and the up downs are not as bendy. But we can see there's some real nonsense going on back here. Okay. Quick pause in the video. Okay, we are back on it. So here's what I wanted to pull up for you folks, which is our Harmony 3 notes, which I just posted on Classroom. So we covered all this, right? We set our keyframes where they are in space, right? Where the drawing will be at a point in time. I showed you how to add our motion path, right? So we can keep track of where our ball is moving in space. And now, just for sake of saying, the golden guy right here just means we're animating. So any changes you make will store a keyframe. So just for sake of saying. So we are now going to talk about tension. So tension, as it says here, controls how sharply the path bends as it passes through a control point on a keyframe. So tension is what controls why Harmony is trying to curve this. As you may remember, one of our 12 principles as well was arcs. Things tend to naturally move within an arc shape, right? So what Harmony is trying to do by default is it assumes that what we are animating is moving in an arc motion, right? Because again, that's one of the 12 principles. So if we want to act against the wishes of harmony, we need to indicate that it needs to tighten and increase the tension on those particular control points so that the ball does not try and curve through it. It just goes directly to that point. Because as we know, right, the ball is traveling and then it hits the ground and then rebounds, right? So it doesn't know that it's coming towards the ground and needs to curve. It's just falling towards the ground, right? So to do so, we need to activate under our windows the coordinates and control points toolbar, I believe is what it is. Oh, why is it just floating here? Oh, maybe it's not. Did they change it? I guess they did change it. Okay, good to know. Well, it's still on there. So, all right. So we have our coordinate and control points, which I just, again, like with our top view from the other day, right? I just stash it up here in the corner. Also, I'm done working with colors, so I can just like sort of close this little tab right now, right? I can just, I don't need this right now. So now I have all the space over here. So down here, tension, continuity, and bias. This is what we're about to talk about right now, right? So when I use the transform tool, which is sort of like the catch-all, click whatever animation tool. So I don't want to animate with the transform tool. I just want to use it to click on my control points. So the control points are the thing in the workspace that represent the keyframe on the timeline. So this is my keyframe on frame 10, right? So I want my ball to approach this straight, directly, right? So to do so, if I look at my little graph here, if we wanted to move directly towards that point, we want the tension to be +1. So it's really nice and tight. So again, I have with my transform tool, I select little pink dot, tension to +1. Boom. Straightens that out. And then it rebounds up to here. So I don't need to change this one. I need to change the next bottom one. Again, the tension should be 1. Bottom keyframe, tension 1. Bottom keyframe, tension +1. And just change all of the keyframes where they are on the ground to have +1 tension so that they don't curve through the ground. So now you can see those arcs are moving a little bit more accurately to the image behind them. Yes, Madeline?
Wait, so how do you click on the point?
You need to use this transform tool down here, and then you can click on the little pink, the little yellow dots, and they become pink. All right, so there's one final one we gotta kind of deal with its goofiness, which is our initial bounce. Because it's not like going through a tension at the top, I need to make this in between naturally. So this is frame 4, which means it should be here. So I'm gonna move my ball here, right? Now you can see how it's following the arc, right? So I just had to make my own natural in between by moving on frame 4 to there. So now if I play this, again, it's still moving linearly in speed, but now we can see the arcs a little better, and we can see it moving towards the point where it's supposed to go. Now, one final thing would be I can adjust the tension at the top. So if I go to here, if +1 makes it nice and tight, If I use a negative number, I can also widen the arc. So I'm going to go to negative 0.5. And you can see how that spreads out this arc here from the top of the first bounce. And then I'll go here and I'll do a little negative 0.4 action. Negative 0.3. Right, I'm shedding. Oops, what a negative 0.2. And then these ones I'm not at, I don't know, 0, it's fine, 0. So again, we'll look at those arcs, right? Looking good. All right. So I'm going to leave the tension, or excuse me, the ease speed and the squash and stretch for part 2. Thank you for watching.